What if we can positively impact society by reshaping the mindsets of young men? And while we're at it, let me ask you, what does it mean to be a man? My name is Dennis Meralda, a father, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, and a principal with over 2 decades of experience shaping the minds and characters of young men across the United States. If these questions resonate, if you're a young man looking to improve your life or a parent looking for tools to help your son become the best version of himself, the Building Men podcast was created for you. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Building Men podcast, or welcome back if you have been a listener before. My name is Dennis Meralda, and today I'm joined by a repeat guest on the podcast. I first met Bill Matthews in Richmond, Virginia in October of 23. I was down there for the Enlifted event. I did a big keynote kind of speech on stage, and after the event, I was bullshitting with Bill a little bit. He came up and he was talking to me, and I just fell in love with his story, and he's just a genuinely good dude. I had Building Men podcast episode with Bill Matthews on. It was in January of 2024, podcast episode 197. So go take a listen to that. You get a little bit more of a backstory. Brief bio for Bill. He is the founder of Story State Solutions. That's a coaching business for men who are traditionally navigating post-sobriety recovery and their career professionals. He talks about story, state, actions, results. He gets people out of their heads and into motion. We'll definitely hit that on the podcast today. 37 years of sobriety. He's a level 3 Enlifted coach. We'll talk about that as well. And he has a background as an ultra endurance athlete. And one of the reasons I have Bill on is that he's actually doing a big race in June of 26. And the money that he's raising for the trip is going to go to the Stay in the Fight charity that we started for Anthony. So absolutely near and dear to my heart. So long intro there, Bill, but what's up, my man? It's really, really good to see you.
Dennis, great to see you as well. I remember when I first met you, I was listening to the podcast a bit, and the first time I met you, I'm like, Is he wearing pink pants?" I,
Right.
Whoa, that
Yeah.
showed me some confidence, which I needed at the time to learn how to be fully confident and walk out in the uncomfortable and walk through it, which is part of what you shared that day. And yeah, it's great to be on the podcast again. This is my first repeat
Wow.
podcast, and I've been on a few, but the one I was with, I've shared that podcast with more people as a brief description of who I am and
Mm.
what I'm about than any other. I really enjoyed our
Oh,
conversation. So man,
likewise.
it's absolutely bitching to be back and especially share about what I'm doing and how we're partnering together for a great cause.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. I think back to the Enlifted event, and now it was at this really cool venue. It was called the Bird Theater in Richmond. And I was asked to, there were 5 speakers total. I was asked to be one of the speakers, and I was the first one up. So talk about, I'd never done anything like that. It was more like a TED talk. It was like a 15-minute, and you have to be really succinct with it. You have to memorize your speech. And I was kind of going back and forth with like, what do you wear? Mark England, the creator of Enlifted, he didn't give you much. He's just like, you do you. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk about where Building Men came from and where, obviously the colors of Building Men are black, white, and pink, which is that was a whole, story in and of itself to get to that point. But when I decided to wear the pink pants and I put on black and pink Jordans, it was almost like alter ego effect. If you've ever heard of that book, it's like, you put on the cape and you go out and you feel the vibe of Superman rather than Clark Kent. It had that feeling to me. It gave me a little bit more confidence. Like, hey, I'm a dude in my late 40s putting on they're pink golf pants, bright ass pink golf pants, going out there. So I appreciate the story about how that even impacted your confidence. I totally forgot
well,
that I had those pants on that day.
yeah, it's something that I shared on the podcast when I was with you before about embracing uncomfortable
Yeah.
as I carry that kettlebell. It's like, can you walk through uncomfortable
Mm,
things? What people think, what are going to people say, and how often as have we done or not done things based on what we think people are going
mm,
to think. Even somebody asking for help, they don't ask for help because they don't want to be labeled as anything. And typically a man doesn't come to another man and say, "Hey, I'm suffering
Yep.
from some anxiety or I'm feeling a bit depressed." Like, what? Pull your pants up, homie. What are you, weak? It's like, wow, that stigma has
Yep.
kept men suffering in silence for so long. That is a lot of what I bring out
Mm.
to the light. I want men to be able to share how they're feeling.
It's interesting because that's the work that I'm doing. I'm just starting it before they kind of hit that low point, before they find themselves in the gutter. And it is a struggle. And initially when I'm working with boys, it's they're so hesitant to share anything that would make them be perceived as less than or weak amongst their peers, especially. I really get into the idea of there's tremendous strength and vulnerability. And if you're able to own your story and you come across like this is me, no one can hurt you anywhere. If you're like this is I'm going to put it all out there on the table. There's no one that they can't come at you for anything because you're already owning it yourself. And it takes a while for boys to understand that, but once they recognize like they're not the only ones that are going through this specific thing, it helps them, come in and unload some of those things. And I'm sure you feel the same way with the guys that you're working with, right?
Yeah, and what I do see though is generation by generation, that stigma, I believe, is changing.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about family heritage trauma being handed
Mm,
down. Like my dad was born in 1928. I wasn't getting kissing hugs and
right.
asking me how I was feeling today. I
Yeah.
was lucky if I got any words from my dad. And, think about what was his father like to
Mm,
him, born in the late 1800s. Like, what? I mean, no, the world was a completely different place because it needed to be a completely different place. I remember seeing a picture of a man holding a child, and the child was looking up at the father saying, I just needed a hug.
mm,
And the dad looked back at the boy and said, Yeah, me too. Oh, dude, it
yeah.
broke my heart. It broke my heart, Dennis, because I had such a story about my dad being a specific type of way that it really outlined my whole childhood by not by my actual childhood, but by the story I told
Yeah.
myself of my childhood. And then a great coach asked me a question. Hey, can you write down 5 positive things about your father? No one had ever asked me to
Mm,
tell them a story about good things about my dad. But once I wrote those down, I was like, wow, my dad was an unbelievably stoic man, lost a son, went to work every day, all of the things. And when I changed the way I saw my father, my whole
mm,
childhood changed because there's the old quote, you don't believe what you see what you believe.
mm.
I believe my dad was mean and not a good father. So that's all my memories because the reticular activating
Yeah.
system, that's all that it's going to show. But once I was asked that question, I started to see different. I'm like, it changed everything.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. It's funny that the RAS still works in schools when I work with young men. It's like one of the first things I'll ask them is like, "Hey, anybody seen a red car in the last week?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, I've seen a red car." How many red cars exactly have you seen? Do you know that number? Of course, they have no idea how many red cars. It could be eight, it could be 800. Really, who's counting? But then I'm like, hey, if I come back next week and I give you $100 for every red car that you saw, will you have an exact count? Hell yeah. Well, why? Well, because now there's an opportunity associated with where my attention goes. And I'm like, what if life is just like that? What if the more you look for something, the more likely you are to see that thing? And the other thing, real quick about your father, too, Bill, is I just said this yesterday to a group of young men in East Rutherford, which is right near MetLife Stadium. Tough drive in. It's just like I drive right past the location where Anthony died. And yesterday morning it was pretty crazy. Like haven't really had this happen yet, but yesterday morning I'm driving in and there was an accident on Route 3 in almost the same exact spot. I know where he was killed. So there was an accident and there was cop cars and there was an ambulance and it was like my heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I had to pull off to the side of the road and it was like I've never really had a panic attack or anxiety attack, but I would imagine that's the closest it could ever feel. And when I go in with the boys, the first thing we do together after we shake hands with one another is we share a win and a struggle. And I'll usually lead it off. And my struggle, I try to get a little bit below the surface and a little bit deeper because I'm trying to model for them that it's okay for a man to show some vulnerability. And so I talked about that experience, and as I did, I got choked up in front of the boys. And typically, like in one of the first two meetings of the year, I'll tell a story, and there's some tears flowing. But what that does is it gives them permission to follow suit. But what I told them yesterday, Bill, after telling that story, I was like, "Listen, guys, I can't even imagine the things that you guys have been through in your life. And there's some kids coming from some really tough areas in North Jersey. I don't know what it's like to be a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old boy coming from an inner city area with all the things you've seen and you've gone through. I really don't know what that's like. I know you're going to go through other challenges in your life. Capital T truth, you're going to experience some really difficult things. While those things that have happened to you most likely are not your fault, now they're 100% your responsibility to understand and to deal with them, because if not, you're going to repeat that cycle. So just the boys hearing that and like, okay, I'll acknowledge this has been challenging for you, but what are you going to do with it now? So when you hear things like that, are you still dealing with that same type of thing with the guys that you're working with? And I'm sure the avatars, most of the men are, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, right?
Yeah, it's such a fine thing because I get it. Things
Mm,
happen to us, but in my current groups of men that I'm working, it's not currently happening to you. It's like, hey, you're not going to believe what happened to me 40 years
mm,
ago. Like, dude, is that
yeah.
really the trauma? Or is the trauma the story that you've told yourself about it for 40
Mm,
years? I'm careful because hey, bad things happen to me too. I'm not minimizing that. But that happened to you, but what you're doing now is up to you. You can change that. But in a lot of therapy, it's really a fine line to walk because I'm not trying to minimize what happened to anybody. I uh, I always want to be cautious of that
mm,
line, but yeah, it's like you are responsible for what you're doing today. I mean, even the person that maybe even did that to you, and me too, isn't even alive anymore.
mm.
So having that resentment and living in that past is not helping you in any way today.
Mm. So, Bill, you mentioned that you've been sober for 37 years, and first and foremost, congratulations. Absolutely tremendous. What an inspiration and role model you are for anyone who's listening to this podcast right now. While I definitely would recommend people go back and listen to that episode 197 in January of 24, just to give people a little bit of an idea about that. Like, talk to me a little bit about who Bill Matthews was before, before you got into using it. If I remember correctly, it was pretty early. It was like in your like 10, 11, 12-year-old time frame. And then like, what was it that really like that got you hooked into it?
Yeah, I took my first drink at 11 years old,
11.
and it's interesting because I lots of people start drinking because there's this hole that needs to be filled. Drinking actually created a hole.
Mm,
For me, it actually pushed everybody away. However, it does give you a sense of ease and comfort around other people. So that lack of confidence, lack of speaking up for yourself when I was drinking or using other mind-altering chemicals, I was able to be more outgoing and whatever. And then you get addicted to that feeling. Whatever class they teach young boys how to deal with conflict and sadness and depression, I must have missed that
mm,
class. I missed a lot of classes in school, but I definitely missed that one. So alcohol and drugs was never my problem. And that sounds weird to
mm,
people to say. They became my solution to my problem.
mm,
My problem was I had this sense of dis-ease. I was uncomfortable and awkward and didn't know how to express myself. So I masked it with drugs and alcohol and slowly separated myself from everybody and everything I loved and ended up in a bedroom at mom's house because that's where every
mm,
self-respectable young man ends up, back at mommy's. And I had a kid that I hadn't seen in a little while and a girl that had left me with my child. And I sat and prayed and begged God to please bring her back. And as I'm drinking a 12 pack of Miller Genuine Draft back in the 80s, that was the big deal. And God said no,
Mm,
it didn't happen. And through a course of events, I ended up in rehab. First jail, sitting on a metal bench at 21 years old, seemingly lost everything that I loved and had no direction. And I felt like my life was garbage. There's no way I'll ever return from this. And then I was introduced into a program of recovery that outlined my problem.
mm,
And it wasn't my drinking, it was my thinking. And they give you a process of some steps to take that can uncover, discover, and discard those things that have been blocking you from God or whatever you believe in, and get a new solution and connect with other people that are feeling the same way. And it's worked for me for next week, actually, May 20th. I'll have 38 years
wow.
of sobriety, and it's the foundation of everything I coach and teach. Anything I say would never go against that foundation of the recovery community that I found. And what I've learned now, without a test, there's no testimony.
Mm,
All of that I went through needed to happen so that I could be here to potentially share my story with another young man or woman. And they go, "Oh my God, I'm not the only one suffering from this." You know what I mean? To think that what was the most tragic thing that ever happened to me can become the actual thing that can benefit others is pretty wild. And you have to be willing to accept the task of being able to do that, because now I'm speaking on stages and I'm in
mm,
front of people. And if you were anything like me, man, I was the kid hiding in back of class, like wishing, hoping no one picked me,
yeah,
hiding, and then of course I was upset I never got picked,
right.
right? But now to be out and sharing this, but um, turning tragedies into
Mm,
trophies, and just it's pretty wild because I got just so many stories to share with other people because. Yeah, me too. When you talk about sharing emotion in front of these boys, and me too, me sharing a personal experience gives other people the freedom to go, man, yeah, I feel that way too. And now you have a common bond with another human being, because we're so alone in today's society. We're more connected and less connected
mm,
than ever, but tribe is the solution. I don't care if it's church, CrossFit, the recovery community, we need to be connected. We're vibrational human beings. And when you're around another person, you can feel them and connect with them in a way that I truly believe is necessary and is missing.
I totally agree with that. You said something about, you were in that spot where you're praying to God, like bring her back, right? And it's those things where there are times that God, keeps us from getting what we want to give us what we need. And I think that's what happened in that situation because your life would have been totally different. I shared a really personal story with the boys yesterday, and I talked about a moment, when I was still married, when, there was just this moment where I was like, how is this happening to me? And how could this happen to me? And there was, like it was around infidelity. And I was just like, how can I go on? How can I continue with this? I have three kids, this is going to lead to a divorce. And and I went back and I said, the story that I was telling myself in that moment was because of this, the family was going to separate and my kids were going to deal with more struggles because of it. And I said, looking back on that moment, this is January 2020. That was one of the five greatest moments of my whole life. Like if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't have started the Building Men podcast and the program, and met Julie and got engaged. And there's so many like unbelievable things that happened in my life, but I had to go back and say, this isn't the end of the story. This is a chapter in the book, but you'll overcome this thing that you're going through because you're a resilient dude. So I shared that story yesterday with the boys, and there are times where I make a decision to just go a couple layers deeper with them. And some of the stuff the boys were sharing after that, it really, I was so proud of them for having the courage to talk about things that typically young men don't talk about. It's you talk, they'll talk about what's on TV, sports, they'll talk about the girl with the big boobs, they'll talk about, nothing about anything about emotions. Or so it was pretty cool to watch. I would love to know though, Bill, like when you talk about you started at 11, but it wasn't the alcohol that was the problem. That's how the problem was showing up. That was the thing, that how the problem was like basically rearing its ugly head, but it was below the surface. You talked about sitting on the steel bench or metal bench. You talked about living in your mom's basement, the AA meetings. Do you remember the moment? Was there like a moment where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. Like this is it for me. I'm starting a whole new thing.
I had been making excuses for why I was doing, and it wasn't that bad, and I could stop anytime I want. I'm certainly not an alcoholic, because an alcoholic in my mind was somebody living on the streets and wears a trench coat and a little bit of puke, can't keep his life together. And I'm a 21-year-old kid.
Mm,
There's no way I'm that. My brother died of alcoholism, on Christmas Day, 1983. He was 32 years old, and he died as a result of drinking. And I still, at that point, didn't know what an alcoholic was until I went to my first 12-step meeting, and they described that an alcoholic, when they're not drinking, all they're doing is thinking about drinking. And
mm.
when they start drinking, they don't know when to stop, or they can't stop. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Our young men are struggling. We see a lack of positive male role models. And in school, we're dealing with truancy, we're dealing with failing grades, behavioral issues, we're dealing with isolation, aggression. Students post high school, we're dealing with an alarming suicide rate, we're dealing with poverty, we're dealing with incarceration. As a society, we recognize we have a problem. We've tried everything with limited to no success at all. So what's the answer? It's a foundational mentoring program. It's building men.
They really do show you a better way and a better path. Doing the right things when people aren't even looking, it shows a lot, and it shows who you are as a person.
Building men means a lot to me because it's somewhere where I can go and open up and talk about things that I don't talk to other people about. It taught me that talking is something, it's natural, it's something you're supposed to do, talking about your feelings.
Also giving me the guidance that not a lot of other kids have gotten, and it's also showed me how to become more of a leader, since now I'm representing something, now I'm in a group.
Once a month, young men in the Building Men program come together for a full day experience, an opportunity to connect, grow, and challenge themselves. These meetings go beyond the classroom, creating a space where they can share their wins and struggles, build brotherhood, and develop the leadership skills needed for success.
Building men means to me is the steps in order for a boy to become a man. They have to go through adversity, hardships, challenges, everything in order to become a man.
I love how when I go there, I'm held accountable. If I say I want to start doing something one meeting, I either have to have it done or shown that I'm taking steps by the next meeting. It's a great program. A lot of kids should do more stuff like this, because a lot of, especially boys and men don't have nobody they can talk to or they feel they can talk to. So having a closed, safe space feels great.
It impacted my mindset a lot. It helped me focus on my schoolwork more. It helped me communicate more to other people.
He tells us real stories about his life, and that kind of touched me as a person, because the same stuff that he's going through, I'm going through. And I was going through a difficult time, and we were both going through a difficult time. So him speaking out about it made me realize it's okay to speak out about my struggles as well.
A place where you could be your authentic self and feel like you won't be judged for it. A place that we've created a culture, an edifying culture for our young boys to level up and mature as young boys in this world.
Through hands-on activities and meaningful discussions, young men engage with 12 character pillars, from accountability and authenticity to resilience and self-discipline, building a foundation for lifelong leadership.
I got to meet the founder, Dennis, and he just seemed like a down-to-earth, cool person. He seemed like he knew us, He seemed like he knew what we were going through without us telling him what we were going through.
They have become a small community in itself that probably would never have happened if it wasn't for this program. If it wasn't for the Building Men program, I feel like I would not be at the level that I'm at right now in my life. Building Men has definitely changed my life. It has made me a better person, a better friend, a better son, a better counselor, a better mentor.
Overall, it's just been a great experience, and I look forward to it growing to bigger and better things.
That I feel this interconnected with like the staff, not only the male staff, but like everyone, and the kids. I'm able to feel much more connected than I ever thought I would be as an intern.
This is more than a program. This is a movement. It's about shaping strong, resilient leaders who will impact their schools, communities, and beyond. That's what Building Men is all about. Let's build the next generation of men who will lead, serve, and change the world.
Somebody just completely described how I'm living. Because when I was not partying, I was constantly just thinking about getting loaded. And when I started, I didn't know when I was gonna stop, and I had made it, that's when I made the first decision that, man, maybe alcohol is my problem or is causing me problems, that's for sure. And what if I began to look at life and take some direction from some people and do some different things? And that's that all began.
Hmm. What did you relapse after making that decision?
I have never had a
Wow.
drink since my first meeting of
Wow.
my first 12-step meeting. And that's not everybody's story, that's just my story. But I did exactly what was described to me. Get involved, get in the herd, people stay in the middle. You don't get attacked. If you look at a herd, the people that are in the middle, the animals in the middle aren't the get attacked. It's the ones that live on the edges, that are vulnerable. And I've just been connected. I mean, there's guys that I've gotten sober with, and we've been sober together for over 30 years. These people have been with me. They were at my wedding, or they were my best man, or they, walked me through my parents passing away. I had a grandchild pass away, and this is what we do. You build actual bonds with human beings through recovery. Is interesting because they say in the book that I read that it's from steerage to captain's table. When the boat goes down, we're all the same. So in an old an old ship, the people with money were up at the top with the captain. The people with no money, right, were in the bottom. But when the ship sank, they're all equal. You go to the meetings that I go to, there's nobody separate from or different from. We all are equal too, because we're all suffering from the same thing. Dennis, for a lot of years, I knew what kind of shoes everybody wore because I was looking at everybody's feet. My head was down, and through a process of all the work that I've done, my head slowly, was raising up, and I can look you in the eye. I'm not better than, I'm not worse than, but I measure up, man. And that's all I ever wanted. I wanted to measure up, fit in, feel comfortable, and also to know somebody had my back,
Yeah.
you know?
I didn't realize that it was once you made the decision to go to that AA meeting that was it. You had taken your last drink. How frequent does that happen? Like, how much of an outlier are you that there was no relapse?
I don't even know there's a statistic.
Mm,
It's not as popular as I'd like it to be. A
mm,
lot of the men that I've met have had some stint of sobriety, and then for some reason they go back. It's just like anything else, if you jump into something, you do all the things. Here's the example I give. I had somebody that had some plantar fasciitis issue, and I
okay.
said, hey, if you do this calf stretch, it'll go away. It'll help. It's been my
Yeah.
experience. And they started doing it, and it got better. Then a couple months later, they're like, man, my plantar fasciitis is coming back. I'm like, really? How often are you doing the stretching? Oh, I don't
Stop to,
stretch
yeah,
any. I
right.
don't stretch anymore. I'm like, well, why?
Yeah.
Oh, because it got better. I'm like, it got better because you were stretching. It's the same way with recovery. I have rituals and things that I do on a daily basis. I'm an active member. I still go to
Mm,
12-step meetings, not because if I don't go, that's not it. I'm there so when the new person walks in, I could say, "Hey, you're in the right
Mm.
place." Right?
S- So with that, say I'm sure you've sponsored many people as well, on that journey, or even people that just reach out to you for connection or support. What does that sound like if someone says to you like, "Hey, I messed up. I I I got drunk again. I drank." What is that like? What does that sound
Well,
like?
they typically, sadly, a lot of them don't make it back because it's so humiliating that they feel like they let everybody down. But that's not how it works.
Mm,
I've never felt like anybody let me down when they go do what they do. Um, and then they use terms like, "Oh, I lost 5 years of sobriety." I'm like, "Hey, you didn't lose anything.
right.
Those 5 years still happen. You had a lapse in judgment
Yeah.
based on not doing some things. Let's get you back to doing
Mm.
those things, right? And welcome." And that's the key. It's like, welcome, brother, man. You did what happens when you stop doing the things that got you to where you are, right?
One of the quotes that I said to the boys yesterday is one day or day one. Right?
Yeah.
Like make that decision instead of, putting it up on the shelf thinking, yeah, someday I'm going to do that. Why not today? Why not start right now? Over the past 37 years and 51 weeks, how often are you getting that like, oh man, I could go for like a ice cold MGD right now? Or is that passed you by?
I couldn't that doesn't even cross my
Hmm.
mind anymore. It just does not look appealing to me. And early in sobriety it did. It was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm never going to be able to do this."
Right.
There's a difference between saying I can't drink and I'm choosing not to
Mm.
drink. One is
Yes.
still the victim, and
Yes.
one is I'm making a choice to not drink. Over the weekend, I was running, helping a buddy run a race, and there's some aid stations, and they're like, "Hey, we got some fireball shots," and
Mm.
and I said, "Oh, every time I drink, I break out," and they're like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I break out in handcuffs," and they just all start
Uh,
laughing. I'm like, "I'm serious.
mm.
You ain't got enough alcohol in this tent for me." Everybody gets a kick out of it. It's a way to really. Make the awkwardness of, "Oh, I don't drink. I'm an alcoholic." That doesn't come out of my mouth. I'm just like, "No, thanks. Yeah, I'm good." When I drink, I end up in places like other states and other people's
Mm.
houses and all kinds of stuff. So,
It's something that I've noticed too. Like if you go out and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna have a water, you definitely get like a little bit of a what the hell's wrong with you? Like, oh, you can't have a drink, you can't have a good time. So I appreciate you saying that, and then it is good to have like to prepare for that moment, like to rehearse it. And if you're a young man listening to this right now, going to a party where you know there's going to be substances that you're not comfortable with at all, like think about like what's your go-to line? What are you going to say to be able to get yourself into a more comfortable space? So it's just like, preparation for an incident like that as well.
yeah, early on in sobriety, they say if you're going to go to a party, just order something, just of seltzer water,
Yeah, with a
cranberry
lime.
and
Yeah, yeah.
water, something so no one's going to offer you a drink if you have a drink in your hand, right? But a lot of people think like, "Oh my God, you can never go where alcohol's around." It's like,
That's
how
yeah.
long, how many times I've been the designated driver. I'm like, "Hey guys, drink up, man. If I could drink, I'd be drinking. I will be the designated driver. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me." And when you're spiritually fit, you can go anywhere anybody
Mm,
is. I don't get sweats because people are drinking around me. I'm like, wow, man, it's kind of interesting to watch the party. People start out, prim and proper, and pretty soon they're doing they're a lot looser. You know
mm,
what I mean? I just always got too loose. I do want to get back to something that you were talking about, like things that happen to us. We think like we're, your marriage and like, "Oh my God, this is like the worst things that
mm,
ever happened to me." And I was talking about praying to God and God said no. And there's a Garth Brooks song called "Thank God for Unanswered
mm,
Prayers." And it's like he's talking about he's with his wife. He goes back to his hometown and he runs into his old high school girlfriend. And he looks at the girlfriend, looks at his wife, and then looks up at heaven and says,
Mm.
"Thank God for unanswered
Yeah.
prayers." And it's the same way for me
Mm.
because obviously, if I wouldn't have had that happen, I wouldn't have met my wife. I've been married for 34 years, and I have a 28-year-old son with my wife, right? And, I have a soon to be 42-year-old daughter from, a childhood, when I was
Mm.
young, 18, I had my daughter, and I've always been a very active father in her life ever since I got sober. So that was great. But at the time of the events, we don't understand why things are happening. And I just shared this story with some other people in a group, facilitated a group class, that we don't know why things happen, but when you look back, you'll realize, oh, that needed to happen
Mm.
the same way we're talking about. So my wife and I, we tried to have a child, and we had miscarriage, and it was tragic and it was heartbreaking. And then we tried again, and another miscarriage. 5 times.
Wow.
5 times. To watch my wife go through that pain and me too was really, really tough. She got pregnant, and the doctor, for some reason, decided just to treat her like normal, everyday patient. And she carried my son full term.
Mm.
When he was 5 years old, he walked up to me and he said, "Hey, Dad, I'm a gift from God, huh?" And I said, "Yeah."
Mm.
He goes, "And God gave me to you, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, son, I'm so glad he gave you to me." He said, "I want to let you know before God gave me to you, I was waiting a long time."
That's wild.
I I don't know what we can't see, but I believe in something for
Mm.
sure. I don't know what causes him to say that or what he's connected to, but it's happening.
Mm.
The reason I bring up the story is because there had to be 5 deaths of my children, 5 miscarriages for that little boy to
Mm.
be born. So whatever anybody that's listening to this right now, going through a death of a
Mm.
relationship, a job, whatever it is, it has been my experience that that death has to happen. So what's supposed to happen is
Mm.
born for you.
Yeah.
And I can look back at everything that's happened. Whoa, that needed to happen so this can
Mm.
happen. So trust that whatever we're going through right now is so something absolutely amazing can happen. And if you're telling yourself that story, you're going to look for that amazing thing versus telling yourself the story and living in the story of this is the most tragic thing that ever happened, and there's no way my life is ever going to get better from here.
Yeah. Dude, that's a powerful story. And for a 5-year-old to be able to communicate what he did in that way is that's next level.
He's amazing. He's
Yeah.
he's he's a, he's a great young man, and just it was evidence of telling me something that I
Mm.
needed to hear. And there's a line that says, "Nothing leaves a man in everlasting ignorance more than contempt prior to investigation." And prior to an awakening of myself, I didn't believe in anything that I couldn't see. Even my wife being a metaphysical like practitioner and Reiki, and there's crystals, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead, do your thing. And the fact is, who am I to say that that's it works or it doesn't work? The power of belief is, if you ain't read a book called The Biology of Belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton, it's like, hey, if somebody thinks this crystal is helping them, guess what? It's freaking helping
Mm.
them. I, because we're affecting ourselves at a cellular level by the thinking that we're using. The placebo effect, too many things, and we can go into it's the power of thinking. You become what you think about. If you believe it's going to work, it's going to work. And also, if you believe it's not going to work, yeah, you're right. It's all based on story. What's the story you want to tell
Mm.
yourself? I mean, there was what are back in the 1800s, they said the snake oil
Mm.
salesman, the cure-all. I bet it worked for a lot of people who believed that that was the answer. People go to the doctors, and before there's like clinical studies that before they even walk into the room, they already feel better because they believe they're going for the solution. This is where I find the solution. So as coaches like yourself, myself, you can elicit that change because they believe it like you can help.
It's interesting. Some of the boys that are coming into the program when I first go into a school, they'll typically populate the room and the auditorium with boys that are more quote unquote at risk. And they struggle with behavior, with academics, social, emotionally, with connection. And initially, when they sit there and they look around, they're like, "Oh man, like this is a motley crew. We're sitting here amongst the other kids that I know are getting in trouble." And I walk in, and the first thing I say is like, "Listen, I don't care what has happened to you in your life. You know how people have judged you from the time you were born until the time you walked into this room. Sitting in front of me, there are 100 leaders. Like I look at you and I see so much potential in the things that you are able to accomplish. Every single one of you is the greatest young man I've ever met." And as soon as I start talking to them, it's like some of them are like, all right, whatever, dude. But some of them are like, no one's ever thought about me in that way. And I purposefully asked to not, I don't want to hear about their behavior records. I don't want to hear about their grades. I don't want to have any preconceived notions. As soon as they walk in, like, this young man that's standing in front of me right now is capable of doing whatever he wants to do in the world. And so that's what happens. It's like they find someone who can carry the belief in them until they're able to carry the belief for themselves. Right. And so that's that whole identity shift is a big piece. And real quick on identity, I just want to close the loop on the sobriety piece. As you were talking about, I was wondering for you, what was harder? Like, what was the harder part? Was it the process of getting sober, or was it building the new identity after getting sober?
Letting go of what I thought was important to me, the friends, the reputation I built, and all the things that I was going to lose was really difficult until a process of staying sober and doing some different actions and building this different identity that I looked back and go, I didn't lose anything. I gained all of
Mm,
this. Because I didn't, a lot of these kids and people we talk to, they think, oh, this is just the way I am. Like identity is a fixed thing. Like, no, it's not just the way you are, it's just the way you are thinking right now. Identity is not fixed. Identity is created by the actions that you repeatedly do every day. So if you want transformation, first it's belief and then it's behaviors, right? These two things that happen one after the other when you change your beliefs. I began to believe, wow, I am an alcoholic, and I began to believe that if I do what these people are saying, I'm going to get the result they're
mm,
saying. So I believe that my behaviors changed because no change in action, that nothing's you got to change your actions, and I that's what began to happen, and I became something brand new. And I talked to people that never knew me when I was drinking and doing the thing, and they're like, "You did what?"
mm,
Like they see a completely different man. Like, yeah, this is who I was, but this is who I am now. And you walking into an auditorium of all them young men and you were casting a
mm,
spell on them, which we know is a
mm,
word or a collection of words with great influence. You did that on purpose to elicit a result from them. Words are powerful. Words matter. They create matter. You can completely change someone's day by saying, boy, your shirt's a little tight. What is that, your sister's versus, man, it looks like you've been working out,
yeah.
bro. You look good. Two completely different, you just made somebody completely feel different. And how often do people don't even understand this power of words and what they're creating? I watched a lady in a meeting and she walked up to a girl and said, what's your name? I've never seen you around here before. She goes, oh, my name's Sally. She says, oh, I'll probably forget. I'm terrible with names. Now, I didn't say anything until after the meeting, and I walked up to the woman that I know, and I go, "Do you know what you said to that girl?" She said, "What?" I said, "You asked her name. Right after she said her name, you said, 'Oh, I will probably forget. I'm terrible with names.' So let me ask you, what's her name?"
Mm.
She says, I don't know. I'm like, of course you don't know because she didn't even she wasn't even aware that she said the words. That's the classes we don't get in school, right? The power of words and language. It's like, wow, I'm telling myself I'm not good at this. Things will never change. You're right.
Mm. Right. Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right either way.
Yeah.
So shifting into more of the enlifted philosophy and, talking about the power of words, what are some of the most common phrases that you hear that are destructive, that people are saying without even realizing the impact of the words that they're saying?
In recovery, men think they've done so much harm, there's no way they deserve to be successful.
Mm,
They don't deserve to have a good life. So they're not even looking for ways to overcome or put their life back together, right? Or even with men my age, they think, oh, I'm too old. There's no way I can start a new job. There's no way I can ever repair this marriage. They just are constantly looking at the problem instead of the solution. But a lot of men that get sober, they just get sober, and I say sobriety killed some of my good friends. And that's an odd thing, but I've
mm,
watched a lot of people just remove alcohol and they're stuck with the problem.
mm.
And they don't do anything. But the internal dialogue is I can't change. This is just the way I am. This is my personality. It's way too late. There's no way to start over. These are all just limiting beliefs. They don't even see a way out. They're just stuck. Like I'm just lucky to be alive. No, you're not lucky to be alive. You're blessed to be
Mm.
alive. Now, what are you going to do with it? What do your kids deserve? What is your parent, whatever, situation that you're in?
So you mentioned before that when you started drinking, had your first drink at 11, and it just became the thing in your life for the next decade or so, getting you to some tough situations or being alongside of you for the tough situations. But you said it wasn't alcohol or drugs or substances that was the culprit, that was the problem. It was a thing that was below the surface that was the problem, and alcohol was just the result. That's how you were dealing with it. So when you started in AA and started doing that work and stopped drinking, what did you realize? Like, what was the thing that you needed to overcome? What was the shift that had to happen for you to stay sober for the next 38 years?
Stop being the victim. If you had my dad, if you were raised where I was raised and had my childhood, you'd be doing this too. I was projecting, they did this to me,
Mm,
right? Instead of going, I did this
mm,
to me. I needed to take ownership. So the 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 program of recovery has a unique way of uncovering, discovering, and discarding these things, right? And you do an inventory of sorts. It's a story. You write down your list of resentments and how it made you feel and who did it and all these things. But then it really has you do something very unique and say, okay, what part did you play?
mm,
I had to start taking responsibility for my life. And once I took responsibility, I can't blame anybody but
mm.
myself. I'm I'm responsible for my life today. Maybe when I was a kid, I didn't. And these beliefs that I had about the world were designed to protect me at a time when I was young, but they're not helping me now.
It's interesting whenever I get into an argument, a disagreement, when there's a problem with the relationship, I've trained myself to ask the question, what part of this can I own? What is my piece in what's going on? Because it's never 100 and 0, right? There's typically something, and it's really impacted my relationship with Julie as well. Whenever there's something that it's a little bit scratchy, we both are like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna own this piece of it right now. Like, I'm gonna own this, and this is as we're walking through it. I just want you to know I'm gonna own this, isn't it? And it sounds like this is what you're saying, and that's really helped us overcome some of those challenges in our relationship. But it's taking extreme ownership. It's taking accountability for your piece in it. And as I mentioned before, it's not going to be totally your fault, but now it's your responsibility to deal with that issue.
I love this because being married and being together with my wife for 35 years, realizing through some of the schooling that I've done, my head is a projector and my eyeballs is a lens in which I see the world.
Mm.
I'm watching a completely different movie than you and everybody. I've created my reality based on my beliefs, my teachings, all of that. For years, I tried to convince my wife how she needed to see
Mm.
things and see things my way. And as a youngster, not understanding how to communicate, when men don't get their way, they raise their voice, just gets a little bigger, and your spouse will be quiet. And you think you won the argument, but I didn't. I lost the argument. When I learned how to, when I grew up, and now when my wife is not agreeing with me, I start asking, why do you see things that way? And when I start asking questions, now I have empathy like, wow, she's watching a different movie. She was raised different. She's female. Now we're having a discussion. I don't need her to believe anything about or convince her to see things anyway. I ask questions of why she sees things the way she does. And a great tool that my wife and I have done, and it might sound funny, uh, if we're having a disagreement, typically what happens is you get into the sympathetic nervous system, little fight or flight, breath, heart rate, you're getting heated. And my voice is getting to a place. If she sees that in me, and I love my wife and we have a wonderful relationship, so I'm just bringing up examples. But if she sees that, all she has to say to me, Dennis, is, hey, where's your sunshine?
Mm.
And when she says that, I have to, it's the rule. I have to pause and I have to take 3 intentional breaths.
Mm.
Breath is an unlock from reacting to responding. It changes everything. Down regulate to the parasympathetic. I'm coming from a rest, digest, and I'm good.
Mm.
And guess what? I get to do it to her as well.
Mm.
Because this is not we made an agreement. This is not how we talk, and this rarely happens. I want to emphasize that. I have a great relationship. My goal is my wife. If my wife was in a room with 100 other women, she knows that she's treated better than anybody.
Mm.
I love my wife, man, so much, and I have an amazing relationship. But it's such a tool because we that communication of where am I coming from? What part do I play? And being the other day, my wife, we have a windshield wiper problem on my wife's car. One side the sprayer works, the other side doesn't. Okay. Can you fix it? Yeah, I'll fix it. I'm looking at YouTube videos. Oh, you just got to do this. None of it worked. So I shut the hood. I'm done. She comes at me again. Do you need me to just call the mechanic and get this fixed? That's not what I heard her say. What I heard her say is, you're a horrible husband.
You can't do this.
I can't count on you.
Mm.
You're not a good mechanic. You've really let me down. In fact, I'm questioning my marriage with you.
Mm.
I started to defend myself based on a story that I was telling that's not what she said. She said, "Hey, babe, would you like me to call him?" That's all she said. But my internal storyteller that lives on top of my shoulder that is out to get me but needs me for transportation is got a great imagination.
Yeah, it sure
That's not
does.
what she said. And when I started to respond, I'm like, hey, wow, am I telling myself a story? You know what? Let me get a mechanic to fix this. I've tried to fix it. It's a little more complicated than I thought.
I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. I felt it too when you were like, you know what I heard. We've all been there before as well. It's interesting the thing that I try to get to whenever there's something going on in a relationship. It doesn't just have to be a romantic relationship. It could just be with a family member, a friend, what have you. Is I try to visualize the difference between, say you and I are in a disagreement, Bill. There's a fence in between us, right? And the fence in between us is the problem. And we're both looking at it from a different perspective, with the fence being in the middle, and the fence is the block of us being able to kind of get to that point. The way I like to visualize it, and what I try to do is jump over the fence. right? And I'll jump over the fence. The problem is still there. It's still sitting there. But all I'm going to do is go stand next to you, put my arm around you, and be like, hey, here's what I see is this problem. Are you seeing this same problem as me, or is it a different vantage point? Like, what are you seeing right now? The problem is still existing, but because we're standing shoulder to shoulder looking at the problem, now we could be like, oh, here's what I'm seeing with it. You're seeing something different. Let me try to see it. Oh, let me stand next to you and see it if I could see it in a little bit of a different way. There's something to that, and there's even the just like to actually do that. Like if you're having a problem, go for a walk and talk about it. Because now you're both walking and you're in the same direction, or go for a drive. There's a lot of psychology around that as well, especially if you're a big guy as well, right? Like so if you're having a disagreement and you're 6'4" and you're a muscular guy, it can come across as a little bit more intimidating as well. So just being aware of how we're coming across, and if we can do that more of a shoulder to shoulder type way, literally and figuratively, it can help us get through whatever problem we're going through.
For sure. It's, I, al- especially when it comes to men and women, I want my wife to always feel safe
Mm,
to share what she's feeling, you know? So the foundation of that we have too is this is the long haul. There's no talk of divorce and we should just whatever, because when you live in that fragile environment, nobody's sharing with you. I don't want a divorce. I just wanted to say that made me feel a certain
right.
way. You know what I mean? So having commitment and some ground rules of how we communicate has really helped tremendously. And
Definitely
I
didn't
hope
think we were gonna go.
a lot. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I didn't think we were gonna get into relationship advice on the this episode, but
Well, it's
roll
like
with it,
men
man.
don't. What class did you go to in junior high school that taught you how
Right.
to communicate with a woman and these different perspectives? And you know, in today's society, you don't get to talk to another man very often. I'm going to be 60 years old and I've been married to my wife for 34 years old. I had a gosh darn mullet when we got married. You know what I mean? Um, Because men give up when it gets uncomfortable. Or I'll hear a man say, I'm not completely happy with my wife. Okay, every relationship is going to get to this point. If you give up at this point, you're going to start a new relationship and you're going to be back to this
Mm,
point. When are you going to make it past this point? If you want what I got, you got to get past this point because I had to get through it too. Whether it's a job or sobriety or marriage, there is seasons and stages. And it's like people, I never stood up in front of God and my family and said, if I'm not completely satisfied, I get to leave my wife. I
mm,
said, no, sickness and health. You know what I mean? And being able to walk through those uncomfortable times and not give up. And I'll tell a man, stop looking for all the reasons why you should leave your wife. Why don't you start looking for one why you should
mm,
stay? Because once again, we don't believe what we see what we believe. When you're looking for all the reasons and ways that your wife isn't good to you or whatever, that's all you're going to see. RES back in play. But if you start asking for what are the things that she does right and things that you enjoy, you'll start seeing more
mm,
of that. I was working with a client a couple months ago. He just kind of humdrum like, how you doing? Yeah, it's okay. What's going on? It's all right. I'm like, hey, I want you at the end of the day to text me three things that happened positive today. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. First day, I only got two. Second day, I got three. Did it for a week. I said, so how'd that go? Dude, that was amazing. I said, what happened? He goes, I started seeing positive things in my life. I said, do you think those things weren't there before? He said, no. I said, well, good job, man. Now you're
mm,
finding what you're looking for. And you don't have to text me. He goes, hey, can I keep texting you,
yeah.
man? I want to keep texting you. It's the same thing about the red car and the balloons
Yeah.
or whatever we want to do. Start looking for reasons you can win, reasons you could survive, reasons you can stay sober, reasons that you can stay married, reasons to be happy. You will find what you're looking for. It's the way
Mm,
the brain works.
love that. So I want to make sure that we get into one of the main reasons why why we're chatting today, Bill, and more move into what's coming up in your life. But I'll start the questioning with the whole idea of like addictive tendencies and addictive personalities, and you spent over a decade in your life and that was a thing that you were dealing with addiction. Does that disappear, or does it get redirected? And what I mean by that is now you're in the process of training for a 200-mile ultra trail run. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of, stick to itiveness and that resiliency to be able to get to the point where you have to get up and run every single day to get to the point where you can run 200 miles. So do you have the personality that it's just like, I'm addicted to running now and I'm going to channel that energy in a different direction? Or do the two things have nothing to do with one another?
I'm not a
Mm,
psychologist, but boy, have I heard this reason why people want to put me down for what I do. Oh, you're just addicted to
mm,
running. If that's what you need to tell yourself to justify why you don't do it, then
mhm.
fine. And if I'm going to be addicted to anything, I'd rather be addicted to something that's really good.
Yeah.
I believe we're all addicted to something. My buddy told me, man, I wish I was as disciplined as you. I said, dude, you are just as disciplined as me, but you're disciplined at smoking Marlboros, drinking rock stars, and watching Netflix. I just chose to be focused
Mm,
on something else. Addictive personalities, I don't know. We're probably all addicted to something. You know what I mean? That we all enjoy something that we do on a daily basis. But do I think because you'll hear that about 12 steps too. Now people are addicted to go to meetings. I don't know. But if they're finding hope there and connection there, then good. So I think addiction probably gets a bad name,
mm,
which is funny to say, but um yeah, I my process of running, when you even in my bio when you were just talking, you said athlete, an endurance athlete. I remember the first marathon I ran and they had an entry form and it said athlete's signature. I've never wrote my name
mm,
next to something that said I'm an athlete. Yeah, as a result of doing these things daily basis, I changed my identity and now I'm an athlete. I'm a runner. I'm these things because of the actions that I've been taking every day. But I certainly didn't set out to go run 200 miles. I just wanted to get off the couch and go run a mile on my wife's treadmill because I was unhealthy as I was sober. Externally, man, life was really bitching, had all the things, but I was, 225 pounds and it was all in a place that no man wants it. And it
mm,
was covered up by an extra large shirt. And I thought that it's too late. And I got up off the couch one day. I don't know what was the driving force other than I was just tired of being sick and tired. And I got on that treadmill. I ran a mile. That was in 2011, and I've run well over 25,000
mm,
miles since then. It started this journey of physical transformation and then mental transformation. And I found a man that I never knew before, and that's a man that could do some really hard shit and not give up. And that's a large reason why I do what I do. People say, why would you want to go run 100 miles? It started with a commitment to my mother. My mother's passed away. She passed away from lung cancer, but on her deathbed, literally, I held her hand and said, Mom, I'm going to run your age in miles. And she was 72 years old,
mm,
and I'd never run 72 miles. But I figured, okay, I'll figure out a way. And I started looking for ways to do that, and I found a 100-mile foot race, and I signed up. It was in San Diego, which sounded like the best weather ever, but it wasn't on the beach. It was inland,
mm,
hot. It was horrible. But I set out to keep my commitment to my mother, and I started running that race. I trained, I did all the things, and at mile 72, I had a pacer with me at mile 72. It was night, full moon. stopped at mile 72. I looked at my watch and I looked up at heaven and said, Mom, we did it.
Mm,
And I cried.
mm.
And I joked because I cried because I still had a marathon to go.
More than a marathon, right?
Yeah, I kept my
Mm,
commitment to my mother. Now the next part of this race was keeping a commitment to
mm,
myself to finish a hard thing. There's something happens in the dark of a race. It gets really dark mentally and physically, and that voice shows up telling you to stop. Why are you doing this? This is ridiculous. There's no way you'll ever finish. And that's the battle I love. It's like, how long can you stay in that and not quit?
mm.
And I pushed myself through that, watching people quit all over the place, get to the finish line with my wife and understand that I can complete really tough things. So that's why I do the things that I do, endurance wise, is to meet the guy that shows up in the dark. Because when you do hard things, you know what you learn how to do? Hard things. I do hard things on purpose. So when hard things happen in life, Dennis, I've already been here. People are panicking. They don't know what to do. I am breathing low and slow. I'm like, hey, we got
Mm,
this. That's my goal. Do I ever panic or get up? Yes, of course. But ultimately, the more I do hard things, the more I'm going to be able to handle hard things and walk through them with a sense that other people are like, man, how does he handle that? You know? Because when you put yourself in that position to like fight through that over and over again. So, but now preparing for this, I've never run a 200-mile endurance run. Race is, it ain't a race. I'm not going to be racing
mm.
anybody. There'll be racers in the front. That's not me. I'm, my only competition is me.
A
And I,
couple things that you said there really resonate. One is one of the things that these are just lessons, right? That I use on a regular basis when I'm talking to young men. And one of the lessons is like, especially with social media, like stop comparing yourself to other people. Really, like like comparison is the thief of joy. You can use people for a bit of motivation, like, hey, like this might get me sparked or going, or maybe it's a text that I'm sending to Bill that'll. But compare yourself to you yesterday. Like that's the man that you should be comparing yourself to. And one of our healthy habits that we talk about is intentional discomfort. Like, can you do something that you know is going to be challenging, you know is going to suck, and do it anyway? And the more that you do those difficult things intentionally, the more you're able to do difficult things because you start to build up this different identity as a young man who is able and capable of doing those things. So I really appreciate just the way that you frame that, Bill. And the one question I have too is like the guy that shows up in the dark is, do you actually like, we all have that, the Billy, the little devil on our shoulder. Who's the guy that shows up in the dark for you?
it, I mean, he's literally described as Little Billy.
Mm,
It's that voice that for some reason acts like it wants to keep you safe, but it just is keeping you stuck. It's full of limiting beliefs for some reason. It's a negative bias. It's a crippling thought of it wants to keep you comfortable. But overall, when you listen to that, nothing ever happened good from me saying, no, I'm not going to be able to do that, or I won't show up. Everything good for me, Dennis, happened on the side of me saying yes and showing up
mm,
and putting myself in a position. Just say yes. See what happens. The universe will put things in your way, but that voice is still there, but it's a lot more quiet because it's like at the end of a who's the boss at every level of a video game. You got to beat him,
mm.
but he's coming back. But now you got like, yo, I beat this mother before.
Yeah.
Now I got confidence. Men don't keep their commitments to themselves. They'll keep their commitment to their boss, their job, whatever. But then when it comes to keeping commitment to themselves, they start to negotiate. Oh, I'll start Monday. Oh, I'll start Tuesday. We lack confidence because we can't even depend on
Mm.
ourselves. You know what I mean? It's like I'm teaching men and anybody I work with, like, keep the commitments to yourself. Have a floor, have a ceiling. At minimum, do this. At the maximum, you could do that, but show up for yourself. As Jock, so many of these motivational guys, if you hit snooze, that's the first loss of the day.
Yeah.
But what's really great about what we were talking about earlier, comparison, I'm not here to compete with you. That'd be silly. I couldn't compete with you. You are uniquely designed to be exactly doing what you're doing. I'm not here to compete with anybody. I'm here to contribute. That took that reframe. I'm not trying to speak better than him, coach better than him, do anything. How can I contribute? How can I serve?
Mm.
That made me, I'm comfortable in any room because I'm not competing with anybody. They might be competing with me and they can be all however they want, but I'm just here to contribute.
So tell us about the actual race that you'll be competing in, or you'll be running instead of, I don't even want
It's
to
a
say, yeah,
200
yeah.
mile foot endurance race called the Tahoe 200. Amongst my core group of guys, no one's ever done a 200, and I'm the OG, the older guy. I'm 15 years older
Mm,
than most, and well, the youngest one. But so I'm attempting to do something they've never done. And I'm about 20, it's June 12th, so
mm,
28 days, 27 days away from doing that. I've been training for 6 months, doing some pretty wild things. Recently, I ran 6 miles every 4 hours until I hit 100. I ran a 50K 5 days in a row to train for like it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be lack of sleep. It's all of those things. But I want to do hard things. I want to show men my age or any men that we're capable of doing hard things.
mm,
If you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and showing up, I'm gonna get to the finish line. And I've already seen myself finishing. There's not will I finish? It's like, how will I look when I'm done?
mm.
Preferably with a smile on my face and doing it. It's Jesse Itzler talks, he has a little thing that's pretty cool. If you guys ever YouTube Jesse Itzler, he's got a friend and it's like, how are you feeling? Outstanding. We don't get tired. He was in a 100-mile race and he was feeling down and his buddy's like, man, how you feeling? No, outstanding. He had him repeat this outstanding and he's like, I just never get tired. And he got Jesse to start repeating this stuff. The guy's like an ex-Navy SEAL. I can't remember his name. It's not Kevin. But anyway, it's a great motivational pitch. So I'm going to have that in my head. I don't want to complain about how far I'm going. I'm going to talk about how awesome. Instead of looking at a mountain going, man, I can't believe I got to go, how long it's going to take me to get to the top. I want to say, how bitching is it going to be at the top of
Mm.
that? I'm going to be climbing 36,000 feet of elevation gain through 80 hours. My goal is to finish in 80 hours. And it's going to be an epic journey.
So what does that look like? Are there like stages? Do you run 25 and stop? Do you run 50? Like, what does that look like?
Got 105 hours to complete the race. You can divide it up however you want. There's no going back to the hotel and coming back. It's a race from you're looping around Lake Tahoe. There's 8 stations anywhere from 10 to 12 miles apart from each other. For the first 80 something miles, I'll be completely by myself. The second half of the race, I'll have a pacer with me, which means a buddy that's going to traverse some of this terrain with me, keeping me on course because I'm going to be extremely tired. In a 100-mile race, there's no rest. You don't sleep at all. But in a 200-mile foot race, I'm planning on taking 4 90-minute naps.
Mm,
And somewhere, somehow, they have sleep stations. You can lay down for 90 minutes and get back up. But you have minimal time. You got to be here by here by here, or you do get what's called a DNF, a did not
mm.
finish. They'll pull you off the course and say, sorry, you missed a cutoff. And there's 300 people doing this at one time. And you would think 300 people, you're always going to be around people. Man, you'll go miles without seeing somebody. You
Mm.
start questioning, like, man, am I on the
Wait,
trail?
wrong
You're looking
direction,
for
right?
markings. Yeah, and it gets scary. You're out at night, you're by yourself. Like, whoa, I got a big headlamp or waist lamp. Yeah, it's pretty spooky.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's not the physical journey that you're going on, but I'm sure the mental and emotional are just as grueling and as taxing. You know, one, just the longevity of it, and then two, like having to fight off the person saying stop and being alone and being with your thoughts. Right? It's a scary place when you're alone with your thoughts. So I'm
This
sure it
is a
all
men
works. Yeah.
this is a mental game. Physically, trust me, Dennis, you're going to see people. If you ever look, the people that I thought would be great quit.
Mm,
People that you're wondering why is she even there, finish the
mm,
races. Because you can physically move for a long time. Mentally, people give up. I've seen some elite looking athletes give up.
mm.
And for all the women that are listening, there's a woman, her name is Rachel Ekren. Rachel just won the Cocodona 250. She won the ultimate race, smashing the course record by 3 hours. She not just won the first female, she won the race, beat another guy by well over an hour.
Wow.
She slept for 19 minutes. She averaged 13 minutes a mile for 250 miles. There is some elite people that do this. It's the human spirit, Dennis, is wild to witness.
Mm,
Wild. The majority of people that give up and quit did not do it because it was physical. It was they couldn't handle it. They
right.
couldn't sit in the pocket anymore. They couldn't endure it anymore. The people that have successful marriages, successful in sobriety, in businesses, they're able to endure what it takes to get through it and not give up
Mm,
when it gets difficult.
love that.
So this is going to be an epic journey, and
Yeah.
it's going to be, I ran my first 50 miler when I turned 50, and now I'm going to run my first 200 miler, and I'll be 60 in October.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. We got to run this back after it's over. I'd love to
For
just
sure.
hear what the journey was like, and I'm sure you're going to come back and journal about it and write down your thoughts. I'm really interested to hear how it goes. I mean, I'll be thinking about you on June 12th. That'll be exactly a year to the day after Julie had her ACL reconstruction surgery.
Wow.
So that date stands out to me in my head. And the other big piece of this, Bill, is that not only are you running this race, but you reached out to me after we started the charity for my brother, Stay in the Fight, and you said I'd like to do this race and support your charity. So tell me a little bit about why you reached out. Like, what was the reason why that stuck out to you?
First and foremost, man, because of what you've had to walk through and me watching that happen. They raise charities for the New
Mm,
York Marathon and Boston and all these other things, but I'm like, I've never did it for anything other than not for myself, but to prove to myself. I've never linked myself to anything. But when I started thinking, can I support? Can't You're the first person that came to mind because, I have your obituary, your brother's thing. I've carried in my vest. I still have it. You know what I mean? Which I asked, hey, would you mind sending me? I'd like to take your brother on a run. I'll
mm,
have it with me on that race. And the cause men's mental health. We talked briefly. It's like men suffer in silence and don't think they can talk to anybody. So if we can bring awareness to uh, men's health and knowing that it's okay to talk
mm.
and to create some discussion around that would be amazing. And your cause, I met your brother. So it all made sense to me. There was no doubt. So if anybody's listening, let's links are in the bio or whatever. Go to my Instagram and let's raise some funds. I don't care if it's $5 a dollar. Everything helps, and contribute to such an amazing cause. I don't want to just run for myself. If I could run for a cause, it'll help me not want to give up. It'll be extra motivation, like people are watching. People want to know that we can do difficult things. And yeah, man, yeah.
Mm. I truly, truly appreciate it, man. Yeah, it, just hearing that from you got me. I just, it means so much to me, to my family. So thank you, man. Um, so before I ask, last question of you, Bill, where can we find you? You said your Instagram. Give us that stuff. Well, we'll put it all in the show notes, but if somebody's listening right now.
You can look at my name, Bill Matthews. It's two T's in Matthews, or you can type in Story State. It's the name of my coaching business, Story State Solutions. The framework that I coach is what's the story you're telling yourself? What's the state of being that's creating in your body? And as a result of that state, what actions are you taking or not taking will create the results that in the life that you have. So that's it. So mainly I'm on Instagram. I've posted every day there for
Yeah,
years. I've never missed a day. I'm there every day. I share. I'm open for discussions. I want to help. I want to be of service.
appreciate that. And three sponsors I'm going to just shout out. First is Finish the Race Apparel. That's where you can get all the things building men, sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats. There's also Stay in the Fight gear on the Finish the Race apparel site, and that's ftrapparel.com. Second sponsor is Become Stronger Industries. That's Paik McNally. We had him on the podcast a long, long time ago. But Paik McNally and Become Stronger, they make badass steel maces, hammers, kettlebells, knives, like really, really cool equipment. And that's become-stronger.com. And then the last one is Stay in the Fight. So Stay in the Fight, the idea behind it is that being strong doesn't mean being invincible. It means showing up every single day, even when life hits hard. That's the lesson that I learned from my brother Anthony. When we lost Anthony in 2024, it shook everything. Anthony carried people, but he fought his own battles with mental health. Anthony's friends and his family started Stay in the Fight in his memory. We did this because no one should have to do life alone, and no one should have to skip therapy because they can't afford it. So Stay in the Fight makes therapy free. We provide mental health resources and therapy at no cost, with no barriers. And this is for Anthony and for everyone still in the fight. So that's a Stay in the Fight charity. So last question of the day, Bill Matthews. If someone was listening to this podcast, they've already got a tremendous amount of value. Truly appreciate just your level of vulnerability as you were sharing your journey, your story, and what you're doing right now. Someone presses pause on the episode and they could only do one thing. And by doing this one thing, it could really impact the trajectory of their life. What's that one thing?
Life is not happening to you. Life is happening through you,
Mm.
through the stories that you're telling yourself. We are the creators of our own reality based on the stories that we're telling ourselves. For a long time, I was the victim of the actions of other people, not understanding that I was creating it through the story I told myself.
Love that. Powerful, man. It's so universally applicable as well. So I'm wishing you nothing but the best. I'll be thinking about you. I'll be praying for you during that those 80 hours. And I'm gonna go do a workout right now. This will be my second workout of the day. I'm gonna throw around the steel mace just from the conversation that we had right now, Bill. So I truly appreciate it. Those of you listening to the podcast, go one step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.